what I of late have been telling groups that I speak to, and did so last week or the week before at Baton Rouge Rotary here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana is hot. And folks kind of roll their eyes when I say that and say, yeah, we knew that. We didn't need to come listen to you tell us that. We walk around in it the dog days of summer in Louisiana. But just how hot it is what I'm here to talk about, including the fact that I watch as the insurance commissioner for hurricane season purposes. On the bottom of the TV news, as they scroll weather data, the Gulf of Mexico temperature. And the beginning of the summer, it inches upward, and in the fall, back down. And we get protection and safety when it falls below 80 degrees, the water in the Gulf of Mexico. That generally doesn't happen until late October, early November, after a couple of cool spells make their way through. And I look forward to that. In fact, I watch it as it inches back down from the high, which hopefully is where it is now, the high. It's 90 degrees, the Gulf of Mexico temperature. And the weather reporter who was doing the weather the other night and made note of that said, you know, for those of us who fish in the Gulf, we don't even have to put them on the grill anymore. We can pull them right out of the water and serve them up. And that was funny. His co-host enjoyed that. I don't, because I know it's a breeding ground for the worst that the hurricane season has to offer us. A week from today is the 6th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina coming ashore in our state. And we are now approaching the peak of the hurricane season. It won't happen until actually around September 20th is the peak of the season, and it drops precipitously after that to October 1st, when the worst of it is generally behind us. But if you recall, 3 weeks after Katrina, Rita came ashore, our second worst hurricane event in the history of the state, back in 2005. And Dr. Gray and his team at Colorado State University, before the season started, predicted an active hurricane season, and then updated their prediction 2 weeks ago and said, in fact, their estimate, their projection now, prognostication now, is for an even more intense season than they predicted in the spring. And for Louisiana, a 45% likelihood that a hurricane will make landfall in our state, which means sometime in the next 5 to 6 weeks. So with those things in mind, I always take the opportunity, in particular when I have a media opportunity, to remind our citizens to be prepared. Heed the evacuation warnings that are given by local officials. 1,600 of our fellow Louisianians did not in the aftermath of Katrina and lost their lives as a result. I point to 2 reasons for that. We actually were blessed with Rita 3 weeks later when, to my knowledge, no one lost their life. But 3 weeks earlier, folks were discouraged from evacuating by what had happened the year before when we had first tried contraflow, and it didn't work. It actually gridlocked from here in Baton Rouge all the way across the Atchafalaya to Lafayette. And elderly evacuees were stranded on I-10 for 10, 12 hours in some cases. No restrooms, no water, no way to get out of it, and swore it off after that horrible experience. But in fact, they tweaked it during the next year. And in '05, when the evacuation order came, late though it was, on Saturday before Katrina made landfall on Monday morning, everyone that wanted to get out of the metropolitan New Orleans area because of the effectiveness of the contraflow system, was able to do so. I got my wife, my dog, and my mom and left at 12:30 on Saturday night, headed to Alexandria to my daughter's home, and drove on the wrong side of I-10 all the way to Baton Rouge at 50 miles an hour, unimpeded. And all day on Sunday, the day before Hurricane Katrina made landfall, people were able to head out as they chose to do so. But many chose not to, in part because of what had happened the year before when Hurricane Ivan was bearing down on us and an evacuation order was issued. At the last minute, it made a right turn and crushed Gulf Shores in that area of the Alabama coast and spared us, but the contraflow evacuation system did not work. In addition to that, the coroner who did autopsies on 800 of the victims of Katrina pointed out that it was actually an equal opportunity killer. It wasn't based on demographics, socioeconomics, even geography. The one common thread was they were elderly, the victims. They were from all parishes, St. Bernard, Orleans, Jefferson. They were male and female, black and white, rich and poor. But many folks from that area have the attitude, or had the attitude, I've been through this before, I stayed here for Betsy, stayed here for Camille, we'll get through it. And frankly, their optimism would have been validated but for the failure of the levees and the flood that marooned them for days and in some cases even weeks in attics with 95-degree heat and 95% humidity, and elderly folks weren't able to sustain that. So, heed evacuation orders. Number two, access the federal flood insurance program. Best insurance buy a property owner can make in our state. We're one of 12 net consuming states of that program. The rest are net payers. My colleague in Florida, Commissioner McCarty, points out to me all the time, although he's a big supporter of the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program, he says we're net payers as a state into the program. And we're happy to do so because we know the importance of it to our state as well as to others. But we're the far and away biggest net consumer. Since the program was started in the late 60s, it is $18 billion in the red. And in fact, Congress has pretty much given up on paying back that hole. They're trying to reform it going forward, put it on an actuarially sound basis going forward, but they'll just write off, if they can get a reform bill through the process, the historic losses. 15 of that 18 billion in losses was paid to Louisiana property owners for Rita and Katrina losses in 2005. 15 of that $18 billion. So anyone in Louisiana, anywhere in Louisiana, Shreveport, Monroe, Gustav 3 years ago, came through, did a lot of damage, as you recall, here in Baton Rouge. But the second day did 2 straight days of 10+ inches of rainfall in Alexandria and in Monroe, and put water in hundreds of homes in central and northeast Louisiana. Number 3, know what your coverage is. Many thousands of property owners in the Baton Rouge area did not know that their company had put in place after Katrina as much as a 5% named storm deductible. Were shocked when they learned it and had to pay $5, $6, $8, $10,000 of their cost to replace their roof from Gustav losses. Know that, be prepared for it, buy that deductible down if you can afford to do that or if you choose to do it, but at least have the resources available to cover that deductible and to know what other coverages you have in place. But now to talk about what I really mean when I say Louisiana is hot. Governor Jindal has been talking in recent time about the fact that for the first time in 30 years in our state, for the past 3 years, we've had more folks moving in than moving out. We're the only Sun Belt state that for the past 30 years has had net out-migration rather than net in-migration. That's from Arizona to Virginia. And it's pretty easy to document the U-Haul trailers going out versus the U-Haul trailers coming in. And they publish those numbers each year after year end. And for 3 straight years now, we've had net in-migration. We've lost 2 of our congressmen, 1 in each of the last 2 census, after the last reapportionments after the last 2 census. And Congressman Alexander told me that with or without Katrina, we would have lost a congressman after this latest round of reapportionment due to our loss in population versus our Sunbelt sister states. So we are seeing a reversal of that trend for the first time in 30 years. Secondly, I was in Austin at the NAIC meeting, the end of the first meeting of this calendar year, and the hotel we were meeting in put a USA Today out front of each door each morning. And the front page story on the Friday morning of that meeting was the ranking of the 50 states by per capita income. And for the first time in my lifetime, living in Louisiana as I have my entire life, Louisiana had reached 26th in the 50 states in per capita income. For my lifetime, we've always been in the 40s. A little bit above, 42nd, 43rd, better off than Alabama, Mississippi, and Arkansas because of our high income oil and gas and chemical workforce compared to those other states. But to go from the 40s to 26, something good is taking place in our state. I don't need to tell you how our per capita unemployment rate, our unemployment rate, not per capita, has tracked below the national average for each of the past several years as well. But on the insurance front, we're equally, quote, as hot, close quote, as we are on the overall economic front. Since Katrina, and this was an effort that had been ongoing for 5 years before Katrina, to attract companies, property insurers to our state. But since Katrina, we have been able to attract a dozen new to our state companies actively writing in Louisiana, taking policies out of the citizens' residual market that was created by the legislature to provide coverage for anyone who could not get coverage in the private sector, to the point where Citizens today has a smaller market share of homeowners and commercial property insurance today than it had the day before Katrina hit 6 years ago. And there are these 12 new companies are looking to take even more policies. In fact, they asked for 19,000 more than the 13,000 they took out last year, but those 19,000 were denied them by the agents who have the right to veto the removal of those policies from Citizens to other companies. We're being asked by those companies at the end of this hurricane season to make another offering available from Citizens, and they are intending to ask for those 19,000 again, if not more. Our workers' comp market has, when I first came to the legislature, then Senator Mike Foster was creating LWCC because there was no market for workers' comp. And the state legislature and the administration created LWCC as a market of last resort, like Citizens, that by law has to write coverage for any employer who can't get coverage in the private sector. Today it has about a third of our market, but it's competing with all the major national writers, plus a vibrant, healthy, large self-insurance marketplace. The nursing homes, the restaurant association, the home builders, and many others, farmers, etc., have self-insurance funds to provide coverage to themselves through what's called SIFs, self-insurance funds. As a result of that competition, our rates over the past 5 years for workers' comp for employers in Louisiana have gone down cumulatively 40%. Now, they've reached the bottom. Last year was the last of 5 consecutive rate decreases. It was 2.5%. This year, the NCCI the National Conference of Compensation Insurers that monitors workers' comp in 36 states, has projected a 2.5% increase in the cost of workers' comp insurance for employers in our state, evidencing the fact that we truly have reached the bottom of that decrease in cost of workers' comp. But the Wall Street Journal, talking about our recovery and how we have done, the Wall Street Journal 2 years ago did a full-page editorial from the top of the page to the bottom, ripping the state of Florida and its then Governor Charlie Crist and the legislature for their irresponsible actions after 2000, their hurricane season of 4 hurricanes in 2004, putting the state in the property insurance business, big time, by lowering the cost of their residual market, Florida citizens, across the board 25%. When they did that, it became cheaper than the private sector. Everybody fled to Citizens. Citizens now is the largest property insurer in the state of Florida. As such, the 4th largest property insurer in the United States of America. And that Wall Street Journal editorial rightfully said that was irresponsible and wrong-headed on their part. And they finished that editorial with a one sentence paragraph that said, and if Florida had wanted to see how to do things right, they merely need look just down the coast to Louisiana, comma, of all places, comma, who did this, and this after their storms in going about a private sector recovery as opposed to the Florida model. And I tell groups, yes, we did a building code, we did an incentive program, we abolished the rating commission, we did a lot of things to attract companies to our market. But all of that put together didn't do us as much good or no more good than what Florida did to itself that chased companies to our market. The combination of that has made us the poster child for how to do it right in the eyes of folks all across America and beyond, because the decision makers on where to write insurance are not just located in Louisiana or even in the United States. They're in far-off places like Zurich and London and Bermuda, where the international reinsurers and primary insurers like Lloyd's of London are headquartered and make decisions on where they choose to do business. We are now approaching the peak of the hurricane season, which happens toward the latter part of the month of September. And Dr. Gray's shop at Colorado State University that annually predicts the likelihood of serious hurricanes and where they're prone to occur recently updated their predictions and said it's likely to be even more active than he predicted pre-season, which was far an above average season, but now says it's more likely to be even more so than he originally thought, and has said that Louisiana is 45% likely to have a hurricane make landfall in our state. With those warnings, I would just urge everyone to be prepared and to heed evacuation warning orders when they are issued by local officials. To access the federal flood insurance program, 30% of our property is insured for flood, all of it should be. Even Alexandria and Monroe, hundreds of homes were flooded by rainfall associated with Hurricane Gustav 3 years ago. And finally, know what your coverage is. Know if you have a named storm deductible, how much it is, how much you're likely or possibly going to be required to come up with out of pocket. Know what's covered, what's not covered, know where those policies are, and have the contact information for your agent available when you do evacuate so that you can begin the process of making a claim should that be necessary. We're at risk. The water temperature in the Gulf is 90 degrees now. It has to get back down under 80 for us to be safe. And when it's at that level of heated water, it's just a breeding ground for very serious hurricane events.